The man was a cartoonist number
Yeah.
one. Yes, he had an interesting male-female life as well, but that's not exactly the documentary of a cartoonist that one needs to have. My name is Kevin Miserocchi. I run the T. and Charles Addams Foundation, which protects the work of cartoonist Charles Addams. And I thank you for the invitation from Jamie and Tom for the Chronicles of Podcast. This will go down in history. I can see this one coming.
Ladies and gents, ladies and gems, this week we are back with a brand new interview, and this week we're talking to a man who has the honour of looking after the work of one of the most iconic artists of all time. Everyone is familiar with a certain family that is known to be creepy, kooky, mysterious, and even spooky. But we're here to learn all about the man behind the Addams family and so much more. This week we're joined by Executive Director Kevin Miserocchi. Everyone put your hands together as we bring you the Chronicles of the T. and Charles Addams Foundation.
Bravo. Nice.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You know, Emmys are coming up.
Well, the phone's ringing off the hook already. Kevin, how has your personal Wednesday been? How's your day been so far today?
You know, this is a Wednesday, and I did watch your Wednesday 13. So all of this is kind of coming to fruition all at once here. So, you know, my Wednesday's been great, regardless of whether the Netflix show is popular or not. Wednesday always carried the child of woe. I mean, come on. How could it be any better?
Do you know what? Only right now did I realise that we booked this on a Wednesday. Like that couldn't have been booked any more perfect. That's brilliant.
That is nice going.
It also would have been Charles Addams' 114th birthday today.
Well, you know, and he's here. He's here. It's a surprise guest.
Yeah.
That's who's behind the portrait.
Yeah.
Before we move on, Kevin, how was Switzerland?
It was wonderful. It's so different from what I have seen before because it was in Western. I was in towns near Zurich. So it was not where I have been before, which was on the east with Geneva and Mont Blanc and all that. But everything being backdropped by the Alps was quite extraordinary. Just beautiful. I mean, little picturesque towns, just fairy tale gingerbread, wonderful. And good friends who I was visiting. So it was sweet.
Amazing. I'd love to go there.
Yeah,
absolutely would. So basically, to start this conversation today, we really need to know how it all started for you. So where did that initial love for Charles Addams and all of his work come from? Where did you discover it?
It is kind of an involved story because what happened is I wasn't going to look for this, and it was an accident that I even met Charlie because at the time I met his soon-to-be wife. We were working on a fundraising project on the east end of Long Island for stray dogs and cats, and a notorious place for people to dump unwanted pets at the end of a season, really in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And then they became pack dogs, wild animals out there. So it was do-gooders got together and we formed this animal rescue fund, ARF. So in the process of doing fundraising with her, I had met Charlie, but I didn't put it together, and no one said we didn't say what we did. We were just having cocktails. It was stuff, and nobody talked about jobs. They were of that ilk that they didn't discuss work at all. And so, process of sitting there in what became T's office, Mrs. Addams' office, I noticed that there were these black and white drawings on the walls everywhere. And I said, what are these anyway? Because they're this big. And she said, well, those are Charlie's drawings. And I said, oh my God, you mean to tell me that your boyfriend is Charles Addams with 2 D's? That's who he is, that funny man with a little bit of a lisp and a little crazy sense of humor. And sure enough, that's who it was. Well, I never put it together because you see a magazine and it's this big, a cartoon. I had no idea. I mean, I think he drew them that small, but I never thought he drew them that large. So then the rest was history. I ran right home, called my father and said, you're not going to believe who, I am now working with, sort of. And yet we weren't. We hadn't formed a foundation, but I was working with Mrs. Addams and I was seeing all the artwork. Because my parents used to give us their New Yorker magazines that came from my father's parents. They passed them along. And my brother and I used to color them in because they were black and white. So I probably colored in half of Charlie's drawings and made them much better than they ever were. And so, off to the races. Mrs. Addams and I became such good friends that several years after Charlie died, he died in '88, we finally formed a foundation because we had gone into New York, removed several thousand drawings from the apartment that were just in boxes sitting there, and moved them to an attic in Long Island where she lived, and then where I and my partner eventually moved in and lived on the property, and eventually helped her leave the planet too. So it was a very sweet and accidental event that happened, that she and I would form the foundation together as trustees. I never imagined it. I was a landscaper, I had a good time planting trees, but then to do this, I had a career before that probably gave me the background of art and to be able to do this and accounting. So to run a foundation, you need accounting and you need the knowledge of art. And the love of Charlie's art was just so easy. That's a no-brainer. But to have all of those in front of me, thousands of pieces of his art in flat files, just go through those every day. It was just so much fun. And to create the databases and do all that stuff that is required from scratch. So she and I formed the foundation not until 1999, 2000, and then she died in 2002. So the rest is just been mine.
That's absolutely correct. That's mad to think if you didn't have it in you to, I want to do something for these cats and dogs. This never would have happened.
No. And, I was really just an acquaintance of hers through other people. But I had done fundraising and she knew all the people with deep pockets. And so we could go into New York and go take someone to lunch and come home with a big fat check. And so I would do the paperwork and she would do light the cigarettes and pour the drinks.
You didn't color the originals in, did you?
And I, of course, was all part of that too. I never said no. But she was a sweet, sweet, dear woman, and she was his third wife and the one who actually was sincerely taking care of business, meaning she was watching out for him. She was 14 years younger. He died 14 years before she did. So it was a very odd thing that they both died at 76, but 14 years apart.
Wow.
This is...
Do the math. Do the math.
I was going to say, Kevin, you didn't color the originals in, did you, when you found them in the attic?
No. I scanned them first and then colored them online.
Oh, okay, good.
That's it, yeah.
Thanks for the colouring book, Charlie. So where did the idea for the foundation come from then? Obviously, you and T put this together, but this was quite a few years after Charles had passed away. So where did the idea even come from?
It actually came about because it was suggested to her that she build a trust around his art to protect it. So that's what her attorneys advised her in the very beginning. And that's what she was in the process of doing when she decided, I could use a co-trustee also. And boom, I was the one. I was there. And because we had done enough work together, I think we enjoyed each other's company. She trusted me, and the foundation was a good idea, that I wasn't afraid to tackle that kind of work. And she didn't have to do anything. She just had to be the financier for the few years she was alive before she died. And then, then my responsibility was to make money because we no longer had our financial backer. And, Hollywood has taken care of that.
Mm.
We sell nominal things just for fans that are not expensive, prints, T-shirts, things like that people can afford. It's not out to make the money. It's just to give them something that they want, frankly. Hollywood pays all the money. Royalties, all that. We have royalties that go back to the 1960s TV show. Charlie never made a nickel on them, and we are still making plenty of money on the royalties from TV because it is rebroadcast constantly. And with this Wednesday business, all of anything that's ever happened about Addams Family is rebroadcast. So it has its own life.
It's like really admirable to yourself to be like, okay, we're making the money off this. So the fans of Charlie's, you want something, we're not going to charge you an absolute fortune because you just want to enjoy Charlie's work. That's amazing. So a lot of people out there would have just.
Yeah, I think if we didn't have the stream of funding underneath this, I would feel a little differently. But there aren't employees here. And so we're not worried about overhead particularly. The foundation owns the building I'm in now, and we still own the house that they lived in Long Island too. So Hollywood has allowed us to come quite far with this. All things considered, we're not enormously wealthy, but we are also not starving here.
Yeah. So before we talk about the foundation stuff, I do want to learn more about Charles as a person, because obviously, there's been some very strange rumors about him in the past, from sleeping in coffins. I believe I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
What was Charles like as a person?
He was not fond of being in front of the camera, to put it that way. He was shy, but he had a wickedly wonderful sense of humor. I knew him the last 10 years of his life, and he was not weird. His art suggested the oddities that people love to write about because he came from the other side. He was on the flip side of the mirror. He was coming out of the dark side, and the things that we maybe all think but we never would admit to. And then the fractured cliches that he cartooned so often. But he never slept in a coffin. People said that, Charles Addams did that cartoon about at the nursery or the maternity ward about the baby being born. Oh, don't bother wrapping it up. I'll eat it here. He never said that. He never drew that. These rumors come out from people who just say, well, Charlie could have said that. Well, he never would have said that. And he really did love children. He just didn't want his own. That whole thing of, he hated children. Are you kidding? Look what he does. He's praising children's creativity and malicious tendencies. We all have that.
It's mental that someone actually believed that. Wow. But
that's where this issue happened when they were doing the Addams Family. Even trying to name it, because after all, it came from a couple of fellows walking down the street in New York and saw one of his books in the window and said, "Oh, we should do a TV show on that." These were two brothers who did this, and then they couldn't come up with a name, and they called him and said, "We really just want to call it the Addams Family," and he was horrified because it would put him in front of it, and that's not where he wanted to be. He was a behind-the-scenes producer, not a front man. He already had a great social life. He didn't need that notoriety at all, and he hid behind it. Most people didn't know who he was anyway, and he had a private social life with a lot of very famous people, bon vivants. He traveled very well in that circle. because he was charming, and he had a ton of women friends. He was a man boy, or a boy man, however this works. A man with a big twinkle and a lot of fun. So he had a lot of girlfriends. And male friends too. Don't get me wrong, but the women far outshined the men.
As I said, when I was doing my research on Charles, the amount of places that said Charles, lady killer, like everywhere was talking about him being an absolute lady killer. Like, yeah. I believe I read he dated Jackie Kennedy. I think I read somewhere. It's like, wow.
Yes, and in fact, she lived. Her sister-in-law, that is Jean Kennedy Smith, lived across the street from us in Sagaponack, where Charlie lived for a short period of time but died. T bought a new house and it was tucked in back in the woods. So, but across the street was Jean Kennedy Smith, and it turns out that of several months after Jack was assassinated, Jean and her husband said, Charlie, you should take Jackie for at least see her, go out. You're the type of person. And he was. She actually was shifting gears. After all, she married Aristotle Onassis, who was a good deal older, that father figure, kind of protectorate. Charlie was certainly not going to protect her, but he was of an ilk that they could travel in the same circles and he would be acceptable, and so would she. So it wasn't going to last forever. It did come to, Charlie told me this himself, it did come down to Charlie, because she had a look that he drew, which was Morticia. He married 3 women who looked like that. He did not base Morticia on any wives. But Jackie was attractive, but she kind of had space eyes. They kind of went out further than they should have. And that is a little bit of a look that he liked. And then it came down to, Charlie about marriage, possibly, or, Forever Amber. And she said, "Oh, Charles, what would we talk about at night? Cartooning?" Like, oh, well, hit the road. Hit the road. I think it's safe. Caroline doesn't like me, but she's not going to watch this.
Would you say that he obviously didn't like being in front of the camera? Is that why the character stayed nameless for so long?
No, he just, I use that as, he just was not he was not camera shy, but he didn't care for the notoriety. And that's what he was afraid of with TV. And also there's another part to this, and that is the New Yorker, the editor at the time that the Addams Family became a TV show, no longer allowed any publication of any Addams Family drawings, because the New Yorker was above TV. It was an esoteric magazine, and TV was for those other people. And he was very firm about that. So when that editor finally went his way, then it was free time for Charlie to be able to put in some Addams Family on occasion. And after all, there's not a lot of Addams Family drawings, truly, maybe 150, 80 of which were published in the New Yorker, but the bulk of his work had nothing to do with the Addams Family. I mean, thousands of drawings and 150 of the Addams Family. So they need not worry at the New Yorker, but they did make a fuss. So that was part of Charlie's not to be in front of the camera kind of feel, that he didn't want to really be associated with it because he was a New Yorker employee.
That's crazy. It's funny you mentioned that. You kind of bled beautifully to my next question, really. I was going to say, because most people do associate Charles with the Addams Family, but really it's a fraction of what he did. Like you said, like thousands of drawings and not that many of the Addams Family. Over 1,000 for the New Yorker, I believe I read somewhere. Yeah. Do you have a particular favorite piece of work that he created?
It's funny. We're doing a documentary film right now about Charles Addams. Amazon is backing it. Obviously, they'll be in the role of distributor. They're not really the producers, and I had to make a list of my 10 favorite or 20 favorite, and I have a lot of favorites that are unpublished because of looking at how he actually performed his craft. So I think his rough drawings or his preliminaries sometimes are even more interesting. But he's got a whole series that we actually put into a book about relationships, and it was called Happily Ever After, obviously. And because Charlie did like to observe that part of life that men and women all go through. And he had experience with one wife who was probably could have gone to jail if we had the right time, just because she was a bad girl. She just was bad. She just was naughty, and she just misbehaved. And she became a member of your country. She married a lord, and she used Charlie to get there. So she complained. So Charlie had his full experience of the good and bad sides of husband and wives, and how to. The gist of the book is they fall in love, they see each other, they date, they marry, and then what to do with the body. And that's the gist of the book. So, and most of the ones I really love are of that ilk, because they're very funny. It's what the husband would like to do to the wife. There's every imaginable way of murdering each other is brought out in Charlie's work. And I mean, there's one of his women always have piano legs and are large, and the husbands have been beaten into the ground so they're a good 2 feet shorter than the wife. And there's one of a woman in a department store, and haberdasher, and talking to the man who's behind the counter, and she says, "Well, I don't know his sleeve length, but his neck's about like this." So I mean, that's the gist of it's subtle humor, but everybody gets it,
Say how you feel, Charlie. Jesus, that's amazing.
It's, he survived that very short marriage very well. But Lady Colleton became Lady Colleton. Barbara Barb became Lady Colleton. So in Charlie's life, he referred to his first wife was Good Barbara, and his second wife was Bad Barbara. And so we have that. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
That's what I love about when I was doing my research for this. I was like, what, really? What? Like, this is real life? It's crazy. But what is it? I don't want to focus too much on the Addams family, but obviously it is what Charles is most known for. What is it, do you think, about that stood out, that made it so popular?
Because I think it was, there was nothing different about them except that they lived parallel to the majority. And for it to be on TV in the 60s, at a time when, JFK was assassinated while this was going on as well. Politically, a little bit of unrest, a little more humor was needed, perhaps, and maybe that's why the TV show came up. And that I think it was NBC doing the Addams Family, and it was ABC doing the Munsters. So they had to come up with one to compete with each other. The Addams Family were doing exactly what Middle America was doing. They were raising a family. They just happened to be on the other side of the mirror and a little odd, perhaps, and that they were house proud, but they didn't bother to repair their house. It was an old Victorian mess. And Charlie lived within that kind of himself. He liked the detritus of old houses. And I think that the popularity of it was because it was a little off-center, but it also praised that aspect of the children and the parents, and without carrying a flag saying, let's all become the Addams Family, it was refreshing, and it was comedic, and it didn't hurt that it had John Astin and Carolyn Jones. The rest of them after that are interesting, but not what Charlie drew at all. We've got Angelica Houston and Raul Julia, like the prince and princess riding off into the sunset. That's not what Charlie drew at all. Raul Julia was way too swashbuckler, too handsome. His morticians were supposed to be beautiful but strange looking. So, and everybody else became glam, way too glamorous. And they're very glamorous now. I've actually had conversation with Luis Guzman, who's playing Gomez, and I said, you're different looking, and you're exactly what Charlie drew. It's wonderful. Nathan Lane on Broadway was pretty good too, because his eyebrows went right up into a upside down V. He was just right. And that's not making fun of. It just was like, no, you nailed it. You've got the look, and a wig here and there, it helps too. But I think they're a lot more real than what TV was doing in those first two films that were just a little too pretty.
Yeah.
Why do they get associated with Halloween and winter so much, though?
I guess because Charlie, it is. It's like Shocktober is his work. It's like, God, he was born in January. Let's get a grip here. But it is because his cartoons are maybe exemplary of a stranger side of life. And Halloween is where probably the only holiday that we do allow that to creep in. Everything else is happy and pretty and celebratory. And Halloween is witches and broomsticks. And he drew a lot of that too. He did a lot of work on witches. And did some covers that were pumpkins and things like that. So I think it's a natural. I hate that it exists, but we're extremely busy. Always have an exhibition. The town of Westfield, New Jersey, where Charlie was born, has a whole month called Addams Fest, and they paint all the windows with Addams Family characters. They have a monster ball. They have a lot of exhibits and events that go on, but it's for the whole month of October.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's it's that, summer is over, kids are back at school, and so see that first month of September is getting used to. Now we're going to approach the long part of the year and no vacation. And then they go into, let's take a break before the serious holidays come up. So October is a weird month of, burning leaves and burning witches. I guess that's the way it goes.
So obviously, part of doing the foundation, you've had to curate all these pieces of Addams' art. Did I see some of them was like 1,600 pieces in the collection or something like that?
Well, that's the published pieces.
Just the published.
And then there's a couple of thousand more that are unpublished. So we have, almost 4,000 pieces, really. And he also did a lot of advertising. So we have that too. When he became popular, he was hired by everything from perfumes to Volkswagen to, beauty creams and all kinds of products. So he did a lot of advertising, and he had only the right of first refusal with the New Yorker. So he had, in 1954 to 56, he had a syndicated newspaper across the United States that published his work regularly, weekly. So he was really being covered by more than just the New Yorker. And so therefore, there's a lot of work, a lot of drawings.
Did you know where all of this was originally when you first started doing this, or have you found stuff like over the years? I don't know, because you're saying you live on the estate, opening a cupboard, like, oh, another box.
No, because Charlie really lived in New York. He was a weekender on the East End of Long Island, but that's where his wife lived. And he was in New York in a two-story apartment. And there's like two studio apartments on top of each other with an interior staircase, meaning it was the fire staircase. No elevator, that you stopped on the 11th floor and went up to 12 and 13, which was called 12 and 14. And all his artwork he stored in boxes under his bed. So That's where we moved the artwork, and some of it had been moved out by then, so it was being in storage. But technically, he would keep all his work under his bed until the water tower on the roof broke a couple of times. And so there was some water damage work.
No.
So, but that's the nature of an artist, really and truly. Once it's published and done, there's kind of done with it. I mean, he had a lot of framed pieces in his apartment too, but and then framed things out on Long Island. But technically, we found a lot in the apartment after he died, and we were moving it out. His wife had already done at least a storage unit to keep the work dry. Once she found out that the tower broke, the water tower on the roof, it's like, Charlie, come on, you can't keep the artwork here. And he didn't have the same thoughts about the value of it that she did. And it wasn't that she found it, so valuable that, we're going to move to Costa Rica on it. It was just that you should save this work. It's in the collections of the New York Public Library, of the Museum of the City of New York. There's some validity to your work here besides the next magazine. And that's why she was the right one to form the foundation, because she had that in her heart.
Wow.
Go
on, Jimmy.
I was going to say, it's almost like Charlie didn't realize just how important his work was to like pop culture in the world, really. So just leave it in a box. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is it, because he did not want his name associated with the television program. It was an embarrassment, and pop culture he wasn't plugged into that. He loved cars, he loved women, and he then also loved cartoons. But, the truth of the matter is he had, a dozen crossbows. And they were like art on the walls of the one apartment. Beautiful old crossbows that he would found just slamming around old antique stores, and they'd, find them in the back room, and, $10. I mean, these are incredible things. He once, in his apartment in New York, I remember him saying, I said, Charlie, have you ever used these? He liked bow and arrow. He very, very good marksman. Not great with guns, but loved he loved castles and knights and all of that, dragons, the whole thing. And he said, sure, this is the one. Here's one that I really did fix, and it had a steel cable. And he put an arrow in it and shot it, and went right through right in the apartment, and right through the wooden swinging door into the kitchen, and embedded itself into the cement wall behind it. It's like, oh my God. And that was Charlie, just like, yeah, you see, it works. He was fun. That's what I'm saying. He was a man boy. He just never grew up, And cars, a lot of cars. He had 2 Bugattis in his life, not at the same time. He was never extremely wealthy, but he was comfortable. So he bought a lot of vintage cars and loved them and raced them. He raced at Watkins Glen when they first opened it, with a big old bomb of a car. So he didn't miss out. He was able to pursue his loves his entire life.
That's amazing. I mean, what sort of responsibilities come with protecting both the artistic and cultural legacy of such an iconic guy and his work?
Yeah, I don't think T and I really thought about that when we did it. It was just a smart idea to protect it. And that she had a trust around it to protect it to start with was the right move. As far as a foundation, I don't think either of us particularly thought that through. I knew that I would not be able to dig holes in the ground and plant trees my entire life. So it was nice to have a library job in a way. But I never realized the challenge of the financial challenge and the keeping it together. And we lived on the east end of Long Island, waiting for a Category 2 hurricane to put us underwater. And when I'm storing millions of dollars worth of artwork, and I needed to have it because I curate exhibitions and send it out, so I couldn't have it in a salt mine in Kentucky and expect to go there and make a curate a show. So I had to keep it where I was. And, for all those years, we were stuck. My partner and I sweated that out for 15 years there. When Mrs. Addams was gone, we didn't have any money. We had all the artwork in the world. And then along came Hollywood, and it's like, okay, that's it. So I hauled off and bought the house that I'm talking to you from, which is high and dry in New York State, built on solid rock, moved all the artwork out. And it's safely stored, flat files locked, control. But I mean, it was really bad. Talk about Charlie and then water. It's a constant threat his entire life and beyond Charlie's life. So, but it is great fun to have it. A rainy day, just go upstairs and go open a drawer and go through these. It's so much fun. And to see them big, really. And, a thing about Charlie too. Yeah, a cartoonist, but quite painterly. His skies, his detail. He had a really good friend at the New York Times who gave him tear sheets of antiquities and furniture and architectural detailing. She was a great friend, and they went around to antique stores together, but he had great files of technical things that he was drawing accurately, not just, I'll think it up. His castles, everything he did was very technical, and a good job, a wonderful job. I think he was appreciated because of his sense of humor, maybe not his artistic bend, but he was very good.
Absolutely. I do think Charles has a really unique style. Like, you see one of his pictures, you're like, oh, that's a Charles Addams picture. Like, this, it's so unique. When you've been curating all this work, though, have you seen like changes in his styles or the way it's developed over the years, especially from like the earlier stuff to the later stuff?
Yeah, that's pretty easy because the things from the 30s, he was starting out. He did line drawing, and very little shadowing and shading. His signature he hadn't worked up yet, that kind of blunt paintbrush Chaz Addams. He was a little bit more calligraphied and in a finer pen. And then you can definitely see that he got a little more sophisticated and a little bit more in love with the details that he was drawing. And again, as I just said, with his friend Dona Guimaras, supplying him with all these architectural details, his drawings did grow up and did get a little bit more painterly. He was, yes, a cartoonist, but not a Bob Mankoff, not a one-liner kind of guy. He produced his own version, which was using watercolor. I mean, he did 65 covers of the New Yorker. That's quite a bit of watercolor. I mean, color work. So he was capable of doing pen and ink, brush, and watercolor very easily.
Amazing. Like the picture that's behind you now, you're talking about architecture, like that is stunning just to look at, the shadowing and stuff. Like, it makes New York just look like the biggest city in the world. It's amazing.
Good.
Don't destroy it.
That's good. I just knocked the city down.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's wonderful. And the sense of light, that's one thing that he was really good at. I mean, among others, but his sense of light and shadow, I think, add such drama to otherwise just a funny cartoon. So it's got two things going on for it, artistically and humorously.
It's amazing. You mentioned like the exhibits a moment ago. How much of Charles's stuff do you send off to these exhibits? Because you've got a lot to pick from.
We do. I mean, and curating, there always have to be a few Addams family included, but we have done shows that maybe cover 6 or 7 different subject areas that he was strong in, and maybe a color section as well. It is fun to shuffle them. But very often it has a theme, or it's a time of year that someone's going to have it. This Halloween thing is always an issue. We opened when Comic-Con was born in San Diego several years ago. We were invited to come for the opening, an exhibit there, an Addams exhibit, which I always thought was a little peculiar because it had nothing to do with Comic-Con, really and truly, not what we take for granted as Comic-Con today. It's a completely different subject matter than space and all of that that's going on at Comic-Con. But it was fun to be there, and it was fun to see the reaction of people who were not expecting to see that type of exhibit. Most often the exhibits we do, people are expecting to see Charles Addams. Comic-Con, they didn't have a clue who that was anyway. And a lot of people don't know who Charles Addams is. I think our documentary that will be out in 2027 will help flesh that out a bit, that there was a real honest to goodness, sweet man behind all this craziness. He would shudder if he saw what was going on today.
I just thinking that, and I was like, I bet he'd hate this.
Yeah, I mean, he would probably go climb into a coffin and close the lid
and have a nap, because we all know he slept in one.
Is there any moments though where you're walking around and you look at things and you find things and still think, and does it still like blow your mind to this day that this is what you get to do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, I am really lucky. I mean, it's just the whole happenstance of everything that happened, that T and I would be friends, that we would even form this, and that I can, they're going to have to drag me out of here. I'll leave talent on the floor, because I'm not giving this up. You got to be kidding. I mean, it's a great gig and it's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm not selling coffins, I'm selling humor.
Yeah.
And I love it. So it makes the day very easy. Yes, there's business involved that is not fun. But the truth of the matter is it's all about Charlie's work. That's great. I thoroughly enjoy this. And I do have to pinch myself every so often because it just is too unbelievable.
Is there any pieces that you've looked at over and over again where you still find new things about as well, like things that you did? Oh, I didn't notice this, or I didn't notice that.
Well, there's a whole issue with the character called Thing. Thing is not a severed hand. Thing is an actual character, and if you take the time, it's in 35 of his published Addams Family drawings. It's usually just from the shoulders up. It's a shy little weird character. So TV didn't know what to do with that. It wasn't like now with AI where you could have a character zooming around on the floor, coming out of a hole in the ceiling. And so they invented that Thing was so shy, it had boxes around the house. And you can see it's not a hand, the whole arm comes out on TV. And in one of Charlie's drawings, he's got it coming out of a Victrola, which is how they started that whole issue. That Thing moved around behind the scenes and was extremely shy. So I have, the very beginning, I probably noticed maybe 15 things, and now it's up to 35. So yeah, I've looked at more details and found, Thing is in that drawing too, that he always included it. Or in fact, he even said to describe Thing, I think that it wasn't sure of its sexual orientation anyway, that Thing was, not particularly a male or a female, but, just a character, another little weird character. So yes, I do notice details in more and more looking at drawings or maybe considering them for exhibit too, or publishing. Really examining them for a particular reason to use them.
So when people do go to these exhibits, like what's something you hope people take away from these? Because obviously you're showing a whole lot of what Charlie's done.
I guess we want them to know that there was more than the Addams Family, and that he really did have quite a body of work that was, in his estimation as well, much more important than the Addams Family. It's wonderful that they did what they did, but he never appreciated a lot of profits from that. It was TV, and he got a very small percentage of a royalty after they were finished sending out the last phone bill, he would get $27.14, that kind of thing. Like really nothing. So Addams Family just didn't really turn him on particularly. He loved his characters. He loved putting them together, but he was a cartoonist. He wasn't a Hollywood guy. And so that's the most enjoyable thing, is putting Addams' drawings into a staid institution of a large museum and having people laughing fully out loud, shaking the walls. It's like you don't dare do that in a library. And the museum is just as bad. It's just everybody whispers and walks around on eggshells. And you hear uproarious laughter. That's great fun. It means they got it and they're having a good time with it. And, when you have one of those little guest books, the comments are quite wonderful. That I never knew that's who he was. Thank you so much. That's my job, not Hollywood. My job is to exhibit his work worldwide. And so we are. We've had our setbacks too. We had COVID. It kind of set everything off for a couple of years there, of not being able to do new exhibits. And I've done a lot of little local stuff. We had the Addams Family musical. It opened in Australia. I was invited to then bring an exhibit there to coincide with the run of the Broadway musical in Sydney. And so we were at the museum there, and it was very different and a lot of fun. And those people were not, Sydney was a peculiar city for the musical to start with. And then to have the museum, which was known for its antiquities, to have an Addams show. It was a really bizarre event to have both the musical and this guy, exhibited there. But we had a great time doing it. And it was a whole different audience, completely different audience.
Love that. So you've got the book as well, an evolution that you did in 2010, I believe. What inspired you? Is that just another way of exhibiting more of his work?
It actually was done because we were doing the musical. So
okay.
It opened on Broadway in 2010, and we designed the book so that it would be launched along with it. And in fact, we did an exhibition that had to do with the opening of all of that too at the Museum of the City of New York. They own 65 Addams drawings alone, and it was a perfect place to showcase his work while New York was having a musical on Broadway, and we could launch our book that hopefully explained a lot more about the background of this crazy phenomenon of the brand. And it does flesh out a bit. I've discussed things with you that are in the book for sure that, help to explain some of the background of where this is all coming from. That, he didn't design Morticia around a woman he met. He met three women that answered his cartoon desire. He drew who he wanted to meet up with, and then got the pleasure of meeting up with them. And they were all dark-haired beauties. They all were, except Jackie. I mean, maybe that's the wrong word. I meant she wasn't a wife. This is not going anywhere, right? Are we editing any of this?
We edit this, yeah. We do edit this, yeah.
Editor?
You're all good.
It's on you. Go ahead, try and collect from me. I'll never. More podcast, not me.
But obviously, you mentioned earlier about his love of cars and racing and stuff like that, and obviously in the book there's that picture of Uncle Fester racing cars. So that's obviously now makes more. Now I look at it and I think about it, that makes way more sense now as well. That he put his own loves into it as well as.
And he rather saw himself as Uncle Fester anyway. That's a little bit. A little bit. I mean, he admitted that readily himself, that he felt he was a little bit of Uncle Fester himself.
I mean, after the crossbow story earlier, I fully believe it.
Yeah. I mean, and he was a nice-looking man. He and Walter Matthau were good friends. He was good friends with Walter Matthau's wife before Walter married Carol Matthau. And they were there was something similar about the two of them. they could have done Grumpy Old Men together if Charlie had been an actor. They just would. It just would have worked. And he had a lot of fun with that because he was soft spoken, underspoken. But when he did open his mouth, he was one of those people that talks least and says most, because he didn't blah blah blah. Just didn't need to, and that's again perfect reason why he was embarrassed about having it all called the Addams Family when he liked being able to do what he wanted to do without being noticed.
Yeah.
And he's an artist.
You've mentioned it, like the movies and the TV shows and all this stuff. Most of this, apart from obviously the original TV show, came around after Charles had passed away. So how much involvement do you and the foundation have in projects like this? Because I've seen you're listed as an executive producer on some of the stuff.
Yeah, because I, on behalf of the foundation, and they wouldn't be making any of these if we didn't license them. So because the foundation licenses the characters, I get the honor of being an executive producer, just kind of a PS that, I'm the one who signs the contracts and has the lawyer and has the agent and, all of that business aspect of this brand. As well, I do licensing on my own too. I mean, it's not, there's other licensing that goes on besides Addams Family. There are drawings that are used, there are characters, there are products that are sometimes made. I'm a little bit loath to have a lot of merchandise. We do minimal amount of merchandise from the foundation. As I told you, I don't want to make the money on that.
Yeah.
And also Hollywood, my God, the amount of merchandise that comes out of there is quite enough. There will be dumps filled with that stuff. So, I'm sure it's all wonderful, but you know what I mean? It's merchandise and, the next and the next and the next. So I don't need to push merchandise. Advertising, commercials, yes, stuff like that. Right. Kind of what Charlie did do in his lifetime.
Yeah.
Advertising.
So if people are only familiar with Charles' stuff through the Addams Family from the TV, the film, or whatever it might be, what's something you might encourage people to go look out for to try and learn more about Charles as the artist?
He did do 13 books of his work. So yes, one or two of them have more Addams Family in them than others, but that's a timing situation where he stopped drawing them or rarely did them. His wife did The World of Charles Addams with Alfred Knopf, a publisher. And that was a really good book because it took it by decades and did a smattering of, a nice big fat hardcover book, which also is out in paperback. But it's a good compendium of kind of a look at all his work. And you can see how things change by decade too. I think books are probably the best bet. Simon & Schuster published 13 books alone every couple of years with him. They enjoyed a very nice relationship. And he was able to then put in works that didn't get published or didn't get published by the New Yorker or were published elsewhere. And that was fun for him. He enjoyed that aspect of the cartoon book because he did model some of his work and his desires of how work should look by viewing other artists way before him in the late 1800s through books. And those were, not cartoonists, but they were illustrators. And I think that's where Charlie was ultimately an illustrator who had a bent on humor. And so he combined those two things together. He was very intrigued by a couple of old artists who drew very detailed drawings in the darkness that he would. And of course, I'm sitting here scrambling for time, trying to figure out what the names of those people were. One was Dore and I forget the other guy, but these are late 1800s artists, and they were very influential in his style.
Amazing. Just from talking to you today and from doing my research before this, I definitely am going to grab that book because I really want to learn more about Charles, because some of his cartoons I was looking at are so funny. There's one I saw of Medusa and her hairdressers.
Yeah.
I was howling. I was like, this is so funny. And, people need to know about this that don't already, because they are absolutely brilliant. There's so much more to his work than the Addams Family, like you said. Like, I cannot wait for this documentary to come out as well. I think people need to know more about this.
Yeah, the documentary is is featuring a lot of cartoon work. The man was a cartoonist number one. Yes, he had an interesting male-female life as well, but that's not exactly the documentary of a cartoonist that one needs to have. It's his work. The body of work is what made him who he was. And what charmed the pants, I mean, not the pants, charmed the women who, that's really close one there. Charmed those women who all flocked around him. This is a man who, in New York City, you could write a note. This is in the late 40s, early 50s. You could write a note from the west side of Manhattan, and it could be delivered by that afternoon. And we have not only all of Charles Addams' little black books that men carried in their suit pocket from 1955 to 1988. That's 33 years of, actually 1952 to 88. That's all the 36 years of dates. And sometimes there's two in a day. I mean, a lot of times there's two in a day, like lunch and dinner, different women, and notes from across town saying, Charlie, Ralph will be out of town until Thursday. So there was no such, Charlie was servicing a lot of accounts. Frankly.
I don't think you could have put that any more gentlemanly if you tried then. That was beautiful.
No, it never. No, there's no way around this. He was a great lover. He just was, and his first wife wasn't maybe so happy with that, and his second wife really was ultimately using him for other purposes. And his last wife, T, he knew in the 40s, and they did not marry until in 1980. They knew each other all that time. They socially saw the same people. But Charlie needed to have someone to speak up for him. I'm sorry, did I say something?
No, the painting almost went, the thing almost went, the drawing almost went behind you.
Oh, is it?
You just smacked straight into it. So I was just a bit like, shit.
Let the chair go over. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, God, my heart then absolutely went.
No,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You can tell we do our own Hollywood here. It's not exactly professional.
Oh,
it's super.
It's those damn makeup artists and hairdressers.
Yeah.
They're playing a rough game behind here.
But how do you feel that Charles's work now still stays relevant to the younger generations? Do you think that the movies that came out in the late 2019, 2020-ish, and Wednesday, the show on Netflix, do you feel that's bringing in the younger generations?
I think it works. I mean, I've always thought it would be nice if when they do these Hollywood openings, they actually booked the original artwork to be in a museum, at the same time. But that... Yeah. They're two different animals here, and I think my job is to continue to educate the public about his work, regardless of how it's being altered. I understand we're in the 21st century. The delightful little girl who likes to board up her brother in the wall might be it's a little more extreme now that we have a 24 or 5-year-old woman playing a young girl. So yeah. I don't know how far this goes, but there is season 3 being filmed in Ireland, starting in February, I think. So it does have a life unto itself, loosely based on the cartoons. The writers do their best to try and give a little nod here and there. But it is moving into a pattern of contemporary storytelling, and Charlie's is probably a little more antiquated. I would say his subject matter of his cartoons, though, aside from that Addams Family, are very valid today. It's the same. Also, we just keep repeating the same mistakes and wonderful things that we do. Every 20 years or every 5 years now. It's just getting tighter and tighter, and worse and worse, or better and better. I don't know. But, I think the cartoons are valid. When you read them and see them, they still make you laugh. There's a good reason that, men and women still do think of grabbing each other by the neck once in a while. And I think that those are pretty valid. And that's just one example of one area of his work. It's a cartoon. It's there to make you laugh. It's to lighten up the day. And that's what cartoons are for. That's why the New Yorker was so popular with that, because they didn't have funny stories. It was news and intelligentsia writing articles. They needed to lighten up some of those pages, and so they did. He would do work, and they may not publish it for 3 or 4 years. They keep it in their bank until they had the right issue of the magazine to put that drawing in. So it was up to the editors there, frankly.
Amazing. I really hope that people take away from this to go check out Charlie's work, because it is absolutely incredible and stands the test of time, like you said. Yeah. But what's next for the foundation? Have you got anything coming up? Any events, exhibitions, anything like that coming up?
Not really. This is the time of year we start actually working on it. We used to be so that we were 2 or 3 years ahead. I have a couple, but they are 2 years down the road. But most of the ones I've been doing have been smaller, a little bit more localized too, and not those big trips across country anymore, or at least not yet. There are some nibbles at the door, but quite frankly, we're just sort of coasting along. And with this documentary, a lot of focus is being placed on that to get it right and get it in the can, as it were. And get it ready to come out. And then it's the scripts for season 3, that sort of thing I have to review. We're going to be working on a 3rd animated film with MGM as well. They did have 2 before. We're doing a 3rd that's with completely different writers, producer, director. Everybody's different. And I think quite creative, quite different, very different. So, these all fill in the gaps, because it takes 2 years from when they're filming to actually have it out on Netflix. It's a very long procedure, and a lot of editing. So you have to have things staggered, which I'm really glad we have. We'll fill in with the documentary. And I think it's the right time. There'll be all this, well, who the hell is Charles Addams? Well, there he is. That's who. And I think that'll help. So, in the next 3 or 4 years, we've got a lot coming out here. And then they have, rumors of other things that they want to do, which I will not share.
Of course.
Podcast. Why would I do that? You can stay cozy all you want,
Always.
You ain't getting any leaks from me, that's it.
Damn it.
Oh, I had TMZ on speed dial and everything.
Yeah. And I had my lawyers on speed dial.
Oh, Mr. Stevens, do you have any more questions for our wonderful guest?
I do not. I just wanted to say, Kevin, thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. It's been so much fun and really fascinating learning more about yourself and Charles. So, and we really appreciate your time.
And I appreciate yours. This is great fun. This is across the pond. Wonderful. And you can let that lady Barbara have it as far as
I'm going to go and find her right now after we're done.
Well, She's quite dead. But anyway.
Ah, good.
Anyway, I thank you for the invitation. I love you. I love your podcasts. They're great fun. I am very different. I can see that from what you normally regularly have in there, and they're wonderful people. Very different subject matters. It's just so much fun.
What we love.
Got a smattering all the way across the arts here.
It's what we love. Everyone has a unique story, and we love to hear them. We absolutely do. It's incredible.
Thank you so much. Seriously, it's been so much fun chatting to you. We'll definitely have to catch up soon.
Definitely.
Good enough. Thank you so much.
No, at all. You take care of yourself. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Cheers. Bye-bye.